In this video, Seanachai, our 1986 Catalina 22, takes us home after a coastal cruising adventure on Memorial Day weekend 2019. It's part 3 of our circumnavigation of Sullivan's Island and Isle of Palms near Charleston, South Carolina. Part 1 began from our home port on the Cooper River, down through Charleston Harbor, past Fort Sumter, and beyond to the Atlantic Ocean. We sailed north about 10 miles, navigating through the jetties into Dewees Inlet and onto an anchorage in Hamlin Sound. In Part 2, we made a side trip to Capers, a remote and undeveloped barrier island about 15 miles north of Charleston. This video tells the story of the final leg, heading home through the ICW, a 4-hour trip condensed into less than 10 minutes. Nothing like a sunny Memorial Day weekend to bring out the boaters. Everyone seems in a hurry to get where they're going. But Seanachai motors along at a steady 4 knots. Swing keel raised, she draws about 2 feet, so we ride the wakes for about an hour. Until mercifully, we reached Goat Island's no-wake zone.
Thank God for no-wake zone.
The 2-mile-long skinny strip of sand bluff has electricity but no paved roads or cars. A perfect spot for rustic living with access to some of the area's best fishing and simple pleasures of island life. Named Goat Island, the legend says, because sometime in the early 20th century, the island was claimed through squatters' rights by a man and his wife, who lived in a small hut among the feral goats. The goats are gone now, but deer, raccoon, and even some red wolves prowl around. You can barely see the homes tucked away in the trees. The fun today is on the docks.
More like it, huh?
Yeah, this is like being in the parade. On our port side is the Isle of Palms, a favorite beach spot for locals and tourists. There are shops, restaurants, hotels, condos, and beautiful beachfront mansions. The full-service Isle of Palms Marina has a public boat ramp, floating docks, and facilities for transient boaters. It's home to boat rentals and charters, the Marina Market, and the Morgan Creek Grill. And parasailing. Get ready for some parasailing.
Yeah, you going?
Yeah, I can do it. How about you? You want to do it?
No, I'm scared to death of that. That's why I got a sailboat.
A sailboat. No sooner do we say goodbye to the Isle of Palms and Goat Island, coasting out of the no-wake zone, we're immediately riding a rush of waves.
There we go. Look at him rocking that boat.
You're responsible for your wake. The boats racing through the ICW are no challenge for the dredging crews. The Army Corps of Engineers is responsible for maintaining the waterway. A survey crew samples conditions every 6 to 12 months. They highlight critical areas and dredge to a depth of 12 feet deep at low tide. This time, the dredging at Breach Inlet will move some 500,000 cubic yards of silt, sand, and sediment from the bottom of the channel. This contractor uses a cutter head rig to break the mud and sediment in the bottom of the channel. It's then sucked up through a pump and up through a pipeline. We can see the bridge over Breach Inlet connecting the Isle of Palms and Sullivan's Island. It's named the H.L. Hunley, honoring the first successful combat submarine in world history. After completing her mission in 1864, the Hunley mysteriously vanished and remained lost at sea for over a century. 30 years ago, in September 1989, a Category 4 hurricane crossed Sullivan's Island, traveling at nearly 25 miles per hour, with hurricane-force winds ranging out 140 miles from the eye and a tidal surge that reached as high as 15 feet above sea level. there was major devastation on Sullivan's Island, including the tip-in of the Ben Sawyer Bridge, which was at the time the only connection to the barrier islands north of Charleston Harbor. The 240-foot-long, 500-ton swing-span bridge is maintained by the Army Corps of Engineers. The bridge swings on a central axis, on a single 20-inch bronze bearing, resting on a center support pin. During the storm, the bridge slid into the waterway like a seesaw, with the lower end in the water and the other some 110 feet in the air. Engineers created a plan to lift the bridge with the tide, using 2 barges with a crane and tugs to move it around. Working at night on high tide, they gradually lifted the bridge above the center pin, and finally they were able to set it in place. And so, just 2 weeks after Hugo knocked it down, the bridge was back in place for vehicular traffic to cross over to the islands. Closed, the bridge has an air draft of 32 feet. Seanachai's waterline to the mast top is 29. Just south of Ben Sawyer Bridge is Taylor's Cove Marina. Although a favorite spot for fishermen, these curious pelicans are unimpressed with Seanachai.
Sullivan's Light right there, we just about made it.
The first bridge from Mount Pleasant to Sullivan's Island was a footbridge, built on barrels, and was likely used by the crew of the Hunley on their way to Breach Inlet to test the famed submarine. The remains of the 1929 steel drawbridge that extended from Pitt Street to Mount Pleasant is a favorite spot for local fishermen. The bridge was dismantled in 1945, and parts were used in the construction of the Ben Sawyer Bridge.
Oh yeah, you can get out into the channel here. There's the man, there's that circumnavigation.
1446, and we have completed the circumnavigation of Sullivan's Island and Island Palm. High trip to Capers Island, and the day May 25th, 2019.